Hi, I'm Derek Ashong, and you are now in the stream. Today, we look at rising ethnic and religious tensions in Malaysia. Our digital producer, Ahmed Shihab Eldin, is here looking out for your live feedback. Tweet him at AJStream. Also on the couch is Ali Garib, a national security reporter for the blog Think Progress, which is a part of the Center for American Progress. Ali, for our listeners that are not familiar, tell us what Think Progress is all about.
Think Progress is a news blog, and we produce original content and do analysis and research as well. And we've got 6 different verticals and 3 op-ed writers that write opinion blogs. And we cover everything from security to LGBT equality issues, justice and legal issues, and then we have a basic national politics homepage, and everything is kind of from the American angle, but our security blog covers international affairs.
And you write for the security division.
Yeah.
Do you cover issues like international issues or everything through the prism of American security interests?
Mostly through the prism of American interests. We do some other foreign policy stuff as well, but just, you know, especially because America is so busy in the world these days.
Yeah.
You know, involved in some 5-6 armed conflicts. So,
Yeah.
so a lot of it does tend to focus on those angles.
Okay, well, it's great to have you here today.
Good
We've
to
got
be
some
here.
really interesting topics to cover. And remember, you can check out our Facebook page where you'll find more information on these stories, and you can send us comments, suggestions, and anything else that you think we ought to know.
I am Georgia Popplewell, Managing Director of Global Voices, and I'm in the stream.
Malaysia's population is made up of many ethnic groups, with the politically dominant Malays comprising more than 50% of the population. To be considered Malay, you must be Muslim, speak the Malay language, and abide by Malay customs. This leaves some members of the Chinese, Indian, and indigenous communities feeling discriminated against. For example, a few weeks ago, 3 national TV ads were pulled because they depicted a socially inept Chinese girl acting insensitively during the month of Ramadan. Viewers denounced them as being racist. Let's take a look actually at one of these videos.
Everything looks so good. I must have it all. Sedap, delicious. Adik, nak.
Please don't get carried away. Let's understand and respect the significance of Ramadan.
Selamat berpuasa from 8TV.
Now, Christians have also claimed to have faced prejudice. A couple of years ago, they were temporarily banned from using the term Allah to describe God because there was fear it would offend Muslims. Just this month, a raid on a Methodist church by JICE, the Islamic Religious Department in the state of Selangor, divided the country even further. We actually have some footage that we want to share with you of this particular raid. Now, on August 3rd, JICE members showed up at an NGO fundraiser claiming that they'd received information that members of the church were attempting to proselytize Muslims who were attending the dinner. This is illegal under Malaysia's constitution. According to the church's pastor, it was simply a multiracial dinner to bridge ethnic divides. Joining us now from Malaysia to discuss this are Marina Mahathir, a women's rights activist and daughter of former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mahathir Mohamad. You can see her in the middle. On the left is Khairi Jamaluddin. He's a Malaysian member of parliament with the Barisan Nasional. And to the right is Nick Nazmi, a state assemblyman for Selangor with the opposition People's Justice Party. Thank you all 3 for joining us. We know it is quite late / very early in the morning over there. We appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
I want to jump right in with a question that came to us from our audience. And this is from at Nat Asasi on Twitter, who says, "One Malaysia idea is fine, but it is utterly meaningless unless we abandon BN-style race-based politics that inherently create racial divisions." Nat goes on to say, "It is completely illogical and inherently contradictory to expect race-based political parties to promote true multiracial unity." Khairi, you are a member of the BN party. How would you respond?
Well, I think that's a very common criticism from critics of the Barisan Nasional. Of course, I disagree vehemently with that categorization. I don't think that the Barisan Nasional system is incompatible with stronger unity. I think if you look at the opposition parties, one of it is based on religion, the Islamic Party, and another party is, although multiracial in name, completely dominant by one ethnic group. I think what's important is not the communal structure of the political parties, but what we aspire to. And I think the system that we have in Barisan Nasional works simply because we govern on the basis of consensus. And we have to make sure that each component parties, of which there are also multiracial component parties in Barisan Nasional, agree to national policies. So I would reject the incompatibility of Barisan Nasional, although we have ethnic-based parties, including my own, because ultimately it's the policies that matter and the agreements between the parties for the national interest that's most important.
Let's get Nick into this. Nick, you're a member of an opposition party. Is your party multi-ethnic?
Yes, my party is multi-ethnic. I think it's the most Malaysia's history.
Okay, and so what is your take on the structure of BN in that regard?
Well, I think that the structure of BN reflected on the history of Malaysia when we achieved independence. Structure in the 50s and the 60s, but times have changed. Malaysians have moved on, and because BN is not catching up with times, and that creates the tension that we see today.
Okay, so we've got a lot of questions that are in from our audience, and we want to get them to really have their voices involved. So let's go to Ahmed and see what kind of things people are saying.
Yeah, you were talking about how your party is an ethnic-based party. We have from Hijaz Hassanan saying, a question to the panel on Malaysian racial tensions, to both the government representatives and the opposition. They can't agree that a single school system is crucial for racial unity. Why is that? Perhaps Marina?
They can't agree on a single school system?
Yeah, would be crucial for bringing about racial unity, to overcome the racial divide.
I think, again, this goes back to the deal that was done at independence about keeping cultural independence of the schools, that they allow for vernacular schools. So that's what some people are holding on to. I think what's happened really is that the national school system has pretty much deteriorated in many ways, educationally and also in terms of keeping kids together as Malaysians. So a lot of people aren't happy with it, either because of the standards of education or about the type of environment in the national schools these days, where it seems to be a lot more biased towards one race, one religion, and therefore those who are not of that community don't feel comfortable. So parents have been taking the kids out. So I think they come back. One, if the national school system education levels are improved, and if we can take care of that sort of very divisive atmosphere in the schools.
Let me ask you a question, Khairi, because we've heard that the Malaysian community, the Malay community, is the majority. However, some of the minorities have done historically very well economically, and there were laws that were implemented in order to enable the Malay people to have more opportunity. Can you foresee in the near term a Malaysia where you do not have laws that privilege the Malay peoples?
Well, generally speaking, there are two broad categories of legislation that accord certain advantages to the ethnic Bumiputra community. One, of course, is a fundamental provision in the Constitution, which is Article 153, which guarantees a special position on the Malays and the natives of Sabah and Sarawak. So that is something that is enshrined in the basis of Malaysia as a country. However, there are subsequent legislations and also economic policies, especially one that was introduced in the early 70s under the new economic policy, which provides for extended benefits for the Malay and Bumiputra community in Malaysia. What we're trying to do today is we're trying to streamline this to ensure that it doesn't distort the market, to ensure that it doesn't become an impediment to economic growth, and to make sure that it goes to deserving Malays and Bumiputras. I think the valid criticism of some of these policies in the past is that it went to undeserving Malays and Bumiputras, and it went to those who were politically connected, What we're trying to do today is to try and foster a culture and environment of merit and competition within the Malay community. So eventually, we can scale back some of these provisions to ensure a fairer or a more level playing field for all.
But let me interrupt you there, Kyrie. I want to get Ali actually involved in this, so we'll come back to you all in just a moment. Kyrie, so some people are actually saying, because as Kyrie has given us this breakdown, there are certain elements within the Malaysian constitution that some people say are racist or biased. Can this be compared to an apartheid-style situation? Is that a fair comparison? Or is it possible that we maybe, from the outside looking in, don't understand the nuances of what's happening in this country?
Well, I mean, yeah, every case is different, and I don't know if it's necessarily as severe as something like apartheid, but there's always questions, you know, in a lot of places like, say, Iran, where it's an Islamic republic, and there are other religious minorities like Christians and Jews and Baha'is, that whenever you have these systems that are, the entire system is broadly under the banner of one religion or ethnic group or whatever it is, that people feel left out of the system. And oftentimes that does get manifested in, if not in things like political rights, in things like job discrimination and housing discrimination and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, every situation is different and unique. And I mean, I would be curious as to what some of the specific.
Well, actually, we've got a specific comment.
Yeah, we have a comment on Facebook on the issue of, you know, the word apartheid, but also the policies. Gary Green saying, the apartheid policies of the Malaysian government have touched every non-Malay family, whether it's not being able to get into college, not being able to get a government job, or finding that despite superior performance, you can't get promoted in front of the Malay who might be subpar. Now, both the Chinese and the Indians are sick of it, he says. So then, Kerry, a very direct question to you, coming in from...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
From Ocean Club. Surely the only way to get beyond ethnic politics is to get beyond ethnically based parties.
Let's take that to Nick, actually, because I want to hear from the opposition side. Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, I mean, that's what I believe. I mean, I think there's a quote by a former Prime Minister, Tun Musa Hitam, that a Malay politician might not have a single chauvinist bone in his body, but in order to rise up in the political system, he has to play the race game, and then only he can become a statesman. And I think that model is what is destroying Malaysian politics, where to rise in UMNO, for example, you have to win votes in UMNO, and they are all ethnic Malays. So that sort of model is something of the past, which is destroying Malaysian politics. Multi-ethnic parties like the opposition PKR, for example, I mean, I can't be a racist because I'll be voted out because it's a very diverse party in terms of its membership.
How much political clout does your party have in Malaysian politics?
Well, you know, it is one of the major opposition parties in the country, and I think we are a young, fledgling party that is growing in its importance. So I think that it's not an easy task, but I think we are pushing the boundaries in Malaysian politics.
Now, Marina, I want to come to you in just a sec, but I would like to hear a response from you, Kyrie.
Yeah, I just want to jump in very quickly. I think there is something fundamental here that we have to establish, which is that there are no political parties in Malaysia, even I think YB Nick's party, who will go out there today and say that if they come into power, they will abolish the basis of the federal constitution, which is, for instance, Article 153. I think that is something that all parties are in agreement with. I think what we're trying to do here is to try and ensure that the policies that have been implemented are fairer, for all for Malays as well as non-Malays.
Kyrie, how can the policies be fair if the Constitution enshrines an inherent bias?
Because the policies are a derivative of the Constitution. The Constitution says very specifically certain things that are accorded to Malays and certain things that are accorded to non-Malays. However, some of the policies have extended that into other areas of the economy, and it's become quite overreaching. So those are the policies that I think we can reform in the future. But as far as the basis of the Constitution, 153 and all the other articles which relate to the special position of the Malays, I think that is something that no political party has come out to say that they want to abolish. And I think it's far different from apartheid in South Africa.
There's another question we want to get in that expands this comment, but before we do, Kyrie, if you would just tell us what are some of those fundamental elements that are sacrosanct in 153 that you think must remain?
Well, apart from things that relate to language and religion, which are covered under other articles in the Constitution, Article 153 also defines special position in relation to places in the civil service, permits, as well as bursaries or scholarships. So these things reflect the unwritten social contract at the start of this nation, of Malaysia. And I think it's something that nobody is willing or has said that they're going to challenge politically.
Okay, so I want to I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick.
No, if I can just add, I mean, I think you know, basically the Malaysian Constitution has its idiosyncrasies, and it's asymmetrical in the nature of rights and freedoms between the different communities. The historical constitutional consensus that led to the establishment of the country. But you know, we were a much fairer country. Equality is also one of the fundamental rights in Malaysian constitution, and that is what we find increasingly being ignored and forgotten in today's politics in Malaysia.
Okay, Marina, I really would love to get your response on this issue. Go ahead.
Well, you know, as you can see, this is what politicians talk about all the time. It seems that there's nothing else to talk about except race and religion. You know, it is true, we have worked pretty well all this time. The issue now is whether that balance that our forefathers envisioned is being disturbed because one community is perhaps taking a bigger space, so to speak, and compared to everyone else, and insisting that they get more than anyone else, and constantly griping about not getting their dues. I think that's the problem.
You're saying that the Malay population gets more than other people and is griping about not getting their due. Am I correct?
Yes, that seems to be, at least if you listen to politicians, that's the way it seems. There are some politicians, not from these two parties, but who insist that they always have to have more, that you can't give scholarships to non-Malays, for instance. You can't even open up a little bit of room for students in universities, non-Malay students in a Malay university.
Marina, I want to jump in there because you raised that issue of international students. We have some really compelling commentary from our online community that we want to bring forward, and then we'd love to get your response, and then the politicians. Go ahead, Ahmed.
You mentioned foreign students not being able to receive scholarships. We put a call out and asked. We put a call out, one second, just please, bear with me. We put a call out and we asked people on the ground in Malaysia to share with us their views. We ended up hearing from a Nigerian foreign student. He's a graduate student in engineering, and lots of people have been tweeting saying international students in Malaysia are victims as a result of this type of racial tension. So let's just hear from Muhammad Zabu.
We, these foreign students, are facing a big challenge here, which is racism, especially in the area of jobs. Because according to Malaysian law, foreign students are not allowed to work in Malaysia according to their law, according to the government law. So we are currently pleasing with the Malaysian government to please amend their constitution. They should enable foreign students to work, so that we'll be able to sustain ourselves by living here, because as a student we need financial support.
Now, Carrie, I see that you're nodding your head, but Marina, we didn't mean to interrupt you. What do you make of this gentleman's comment?
Well, in the first place, I wasn't talking about international students. I was talking about non-Malay students in Malaysia, so Malaysians. So foreign students, it's a different issue altogether.
But it still applies, correct? They still...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, I don't think it's a constitutional issue. I think it's more an immigration issue about allowing foreign students to work temporarily as they can do in other countries.
Okay, I want to come back to the politicians for a comment. Let's go to you first, Nick. We understand that this is for our audience who may not be familiar with the breakdown of the ethnicities in Malaysia, but from our notes we know that 53% are Malay, 26% ethnic Chinese, 12% indigenous, and 8% Indian. And yet and still, only 2% of the employees in the Prime Minister's office are Chinese. Nick, does it not, and the three of you are all ethnically Malay, is there not a fundamental issue here of representation within the government itself of ethnic minorities? And if that is the case, how can they possibly hope for some kind of equality in policy?
Well, I agree in the sense that, Article 153 does allow the king to reserve places for the Malays in the civil service, but it does not specify by how much. And I also think that we need to move on with times, and policy making must be sensitive to the different needs of the diverse population. At the same time, it has to be admitted that there are also prejudices and challenges facing the ethnic Malay community or the Bumiputra community in the private sector. So, every community is now seeing their own term, the public sector and the non-Malays, the private sector, as something precious to them that they must be protected because the other community will not reciprocate. So I think that is the built-in tension that is existing in Malaysia, and we need to address it both ways in order to have a truly representative community, both in the public and private sectors.
Nick,
okay,
a lot of our...
go ahead. Before we do that, Ali, I want to get your thoughts on something. We've understood that there is a policy, or at least something being considered right now, and I'm going to come back to get your thoughts on this in a moment, Kyrie, as well, but that would allow for a swap of citizens, Muslims going from Australia to Malaysia, and some non-Muslim, non-Malay Malaysians to go to Australia. Could this kind of policy approach be the beginning of a very slippery road?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of transferring populations anywhere, and I mean, I think it's a good thing to let people stay in their homes whenever possible. And yeah, I do think it's a bit of a slippery road of transferring people back and forth between two different countries, because who knows where that's going to end up. And then another problem is that you generally have a political elite that's drafting these sort of policies, and then there's an entire population that gets affected on it that hasn't necessarily bought in. And that's the sort of thing where you would want individual buy-in on those kinds of policies, and you're just unlikely to realistically be able to get that.
Kyrie, your thoughts?
I think you're a little bit misinformed here. This does not involve swaps of Malaysians with Muslim refugees from Australia. I think it's very different what the Malaysian government and the Australian government signed, which is for a temporary resettlement of refugees in Malaysia headed towards Australia. I don't think the information you got is right. It's not a swap.
So please elaborate then for us. What is the distinction?
No. You've basically said that there's swaps of people, Malaysians and Muslim refugees from Australia. But in fact, what's happening is an agreement, a bilateral agreement between Malaysia and Australia with regards to refugees heading towards Australia, and we've basically offered Malaysia as a point for which a transit point for them.
So you're saying that the people would be able to come into Malaysia as a transit point?
No. It's nothing. It's not a policy where they are allowed to emigrate to Malaysia. That's inaccurate.
Okay, Ahmed.
I was just going to throw this to Nick. I think we might be running out of time, but a lot of people are saying it's an election year, so we're getting used to these, what they're calling ridiculous ploys by state-owned media. One other person is saying general elections are coming up, so this is all just people and politicians using the race card. Nick, very quickly, is that true?
We actually, I'm sorry, Nick, we don't have time for a response. We're going to take this into our post show, and we want to get your response on this, and Marina, yours as well. Stay with us for just a few more minutes. We're going to continue the conversation. Thank you, Ali, for being with us. Thank you as well, Ahmed. Thank you, our audience. We're going to continue this at stream.aljazeera.com. You can continue to join the conversation using the hashtag AJStream. We will see you online.